phone right now. Joining us on the Newsmaker Hotline is the Speaker of the Tennessee House, Cameron Sexton. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate you coming on, and I have a few questions about this whole thing. Can you just explain to me and to the audience how this thing started out as we're going to expel them when it was, I think it's got to be clearly understood, they were probably going to come back and you were going to have to reseat them?
Yeah, I'll try my best. And so part of the problem too, but I'll discuss it the best I can. Is we've been threatened with litigation. So some things based on what the AG's told me, we'll have to refrain from talking about. But to your answer, when the actions took place on the House floor, we're very limited as a body inside the body on the things that we can do. We can do a censure. Or we can do an expulsion. Those are the two options that the body can take. And so the first question you have to ask yourself, regardless of anything that you think, whether or not they could be reseated, win a general election, win a special election, win a primary, regardless of all that, the first question you have to ask yourself is the two things that we have as a body, censorship or expulsion, what did their actions make you think the consequence should be? And then you have to go down that road. The body felt like that their actions on the House floor rose to the level of expulsion. And so that's the decision that the body made. But I don't think that you would want us to make a decision based on what may or may not happen after that. It should be based on what you think the consequences are and what level you thought it rose to, and make a determination based on that, because we're having to set a precedent on behavior, disruptive behavior on the House floor. If you kept it at censure, if that's where your audience wants to go, then you're saying what that is a censure. So what has to happen to get to expulsion? If you say that you thought it went to the level of expulsion, then that's where you're setting at the level of disruptive behavior being expulsion.
But any good politician always tries to think of what's the end game here? What is going to be the reaction of our action? How will they respond? Did you have a conversation with the Attorney General before the expulsion that said, what if they send us back? What are our options? Did you have that conversation?
There was a lot of conversations with a lot of individuals about that. I can't go into details because of litigation, but what I can tell you, the potential litigation, what I can tell you is you have to think about them. Say that there's a special election, right? So you're going to have to assume that a special election they may or may not qualify for, but there's a special election as well. So at that point, the decision truly is about setting a precedent for the House floor. So if you're looking at, some representatives may have and said, well, they're just going to come back, so I'm not going to expel them. In my mind, that's not the right way to look at it. The right way to look at it is to say, what level of offense does this come to? What are our options? Where do we need to set it? They were going to use any vote that you had to do whatever they wanted, whether it was a censure, whether it's an expulsion, whether it was whatever. And then the secondary problem is then they would potentially increase their action on the House floor because that level didn't get to a level of expulsion. So what would happen to get to that level again? Do it a second time? Yeah. Do it more than? So I get there's a lot of people who are frustrated. I get there's a lot of people saying, about them being reappointed, but it truly was about discussing the actions on the House floor and what level does that go to, and trying to make that decision the best you can.
But let's talk about the practical result of what has happened. You expelled them. They became martyrs in the public eye. And look, in fairness, I will tell you, the mainstream media lied about this story to the point where the American people did not get the straight answer. They were told that that we're racist. They were told that that we were trying to squelch free speech. And I know, because I know all the details of this story. That wasn't what happened, but that's the story that went out. So they become martyrs immediately. And many Americans now look at Tennessee as a place where free speech is squelched, and the state legislature is run by a bunch of white supremacists. They believe that because that's what they've been told. Did we not foresee that this was going to happen at the end of the day, that they were going to come back? He's stronger now than he was when he left.
In some people's eyes. But what I can tell you, too, though, is the exact same thing you talked about would have been the same under censure. It would have been the same argument. It would have been, they wouldn't have been expelled, but it was, we didn't get to exercise our freedom of speech. We did something that we thought we needed to do, and they censured us for the exact same reasons. And the only reason
but a censure, the difference between a censure and an expulsion is like the difference between night and day. I mean, a censure is a rap on the knuckles, basically. Expulsion means that you're taking an action to remove them from the body. It's a very, I mean, there's a lot of distance between those two actions.
Well, there is, and that's where there needs to be further conversations about in the future. Do we need to clarify anything to give you a middle road? Maybe those two are on the two sides, and there's no middle ground to go to. But once again, you can't. I don't think you can make a decision. I mean, you can look at it and say, "Hey, you're going to make them this, or you're going to make them that." At the end of the day, I don't think that should influence what you think should happen. You either think it rises to the level of censure, or you think it rises to the level of expulsion. You can't look at it and say, well, if we expel, then this is what's going to happen, so we don't want that to happen, so let's just do something less because of what may happen in the future. I don't think you can look at it that way.
Well, the irony of this situation is that you are being accused now of being someone who is against the democratic process, that you have tried to squelch the democratic process by the actions that you took. The real truth of the matter is they were trying to squelch the Democrat process by shutting down the floor of the House. But that's not getting out there. And I'm wondering what can be done now to correct the impression that has been left by this, because I'm guaranteeing you it really has hurt the reputation of your body, and I think the state of Tennessee's reputation as well.
I mean, it could have, but what I can tell you is we've been hearing from a lot of people back home and in districts when members went back this last weekend, it wasn't to the level that you're talking about. And so what members are talking about is it outside the state? Is it in the Beltway here in Nashville? Who are the people who are talking to us from outside the state? I mean, I know that there's our members who are getting hate messages from people from other states who are very much progressives when you look them up. And so you look at it and you're like, unfortunately for us, it seems like that the Republicans and conservatives weren't as vocal about this as with the progressives, and they were very well organized, and they have delivered a message that's out there. And the unfortunate thing, I think, is I voted for Gloria Johnson, and when she did not get expelled, that changes the narrative as well.
Yes, it did. It really did. Are you surprised that she got basically a pass? Because that turned it into a very racial thing, didn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean,
if anybody wanted to exploit that.
Yeah, I mean, what she did when she walked out of the room, and she absolutely knew that was not the case. But that didn't stop her from saying it, and that's what the national media wanted to pick up on, and that's what they ran with. But it was disappointing because she was an active participant, and she was up there, and so she stood up there the whole time, and she joined them. None of them are saying who was the one that organized it, who set it up, whose idea it was. They all said that they were three participants. Representative Johnson argued that she did less than they did, but that's not really an argument. You still participated. And so in my opinion, you should have been expelled too, and we came one vote away.
Very quickly, the Jones and Johnson were stripped of their committee assignments before they were expelled. Are those committee assignments still stripped?
The policy I've had in the House since I've been Speaker, whether it's been Republican or Democrat members who have been appointed by their local governing body, I've treated them all the same. If you're appointed, you're not on any committees until you're elected. That was the policy that we put in place in the beginning, and that's what we've been following.
So the answer is, until elections are held to make this a permanent decision, they do not have committee assignments.
Correct. And that's been
All
the
right.
policy for Republicans and Democrats alike.
Just breaking right now, a story that's just been posted on the Tennessee Star. The headline says, former Obama AG Eric Holder threatened legal action in letter to Tennessee House Speaker Sexton unless expelled Democrat legislators are let back in. Sources say litigation still likely. Can you confirm the letter, even though if you can't talk about the details?
I know there's a letter that was sent. I think Representative Jones read some of the things on the floor last night. But there was a letter that was sent. I haven't read it yet. I know the AG have it and is aware of it. That letter came in, I think, after the fact. But anyway, after the expulsion sometime this week. I don't know the exact time that we got it. But Representative Jones is represented by Eric Holder as his attorney.
All right, and that generally would be a civil rights case, right? Is what they might threaten.
Never know. I mean, I don't know at this point. You know, we're waiting and seeing, and the AG is on top of it. And my understanding is with the AG, the statute of limitations is, probably about a year. So we'll see what happens.
If anything, if you had to do it all over again, would you do it differently?
No, I think their actions should have been expelled, and that's what.
Well,
I think
a lot of people agree with that, but I think a lot of people also felt that you should have stood your ground and not reseated them.
Well, I mean, I as I said, I understand that. I can't get into the details of that, but what I can tell you is if we want to go through that scenario, that would have been we're 12 months. We're more than 12 months away from the next election cycle, which means you have to have a special election sometime early fall of this year. Right, Brian? Mm-hmm. We all agree on that.
Right.
Okay. What we also know is if there's any suit filed, it has to go to Davidson County and not the 3-panel court. Okay. So you have a court case that goes to Davidson County. And then the question, Brian, that people would have to answer is if you did that, would the decision by the courts, whether you win in Davidson or win in courts of appeals or vice versa or both, would that be done by the time you would have the special election as well?
I see. All right. Well, Mr. Speaker, you're an awful good guy to come on and answer these questions after I hammered on you pretty hard earlier in this program. But I appreciate you coming on and trying to explain how this thing all went sideways and what the thinking was behind it, even if there are some limitations on the things that you can and cannot say. I appreciate that very much. Cameron Sexton, Speaker of the Tennessee House, 51 minutes now.